So good morning, everyone, to today's social system mapping deep dive session for April 15th, 2024. As usual, it's me and Kara hosting, and I have to get this control thing out of my way. And today's agenda is, as usual, we'll do some chat intros in just a moment. Well, we're not going to really introduce social system mapping. We keep changing our templates, and Kara has a hard time keeping up with Christine's changes of mind. And then Woullard has joined, has asked me a question in the chat in Slack recently about data security, and I thought that's a really great topic. Let's just sort of do a little mini case study type thing with Woulard's situation, so we can hear what's going on for him, and I can help answer his questions. So we'll sort of be doing a thought partnering thing. And once we're sort of feel like Woullard and I have gotten complete on the big picture that we each Woulard's questions are, and I'm feeling a need to articulate and share around his questions, then we'll open it up and hear from others if they have ideas that I haven't touched on, or questions that we haven't gotten to. So that's our plan for today. And then, as usual, there will be an optional post-session half hour if you want to stick around and have more informal conversation or just ask more questions. Please do. So I think a lot of you know each other, and there's a few new combinations or pairs that I'm seeing present. And so let's go ahead, and in the chat, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. But let's have you in the chat share your name, pronoun, location. Hi, Brian. Good to see you on video.
Wow.
And it's probably, what time is it in Taiwan right now? It's like in the middle of the night, right?
It's 11 o'clock.
It's 11. Okay.
This is my last thing for the night. Yeah.
It's later than I like to be on Zoom. And then once you've done that, one primary network that you're part of or working with or potentially thinking about mapping for. We do this so we can get to appreciate all the good work in the world and all the systems change efforts that everyone brings to the table, and what a sort of a wealth of interests and passions and efforts we all represent. And as those of you who've been around for a while know, there's often connections that get made just in this little chat intros of who's doing what. And then as we unpack things a little more, find out who might want to talk some more to whom. Welcome. Is it Rains?
Good morning.
Good morning. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. So we're just getting started, Rains, and we're putting in the chat our name, pronoun, and location, and then a primary network that we're part of or working with, or considering bringing mapping to in some way or another. And so you can, if you are willing, it's not a command, but it's a little request. If you're willing, you could go ahead and start putting those in the chat, Rains. And then for everyone who's already done all that, just what brings you here today? What's the draw for specifically for today's session? And Rains, I'm sorry that you can't see everyone else's previous chat things, what everyone else is working on, but
I got a few of them.
good. I'm glad to see you're working on elderhood. The older I get, the more important that seems. Okay. And okay, let me just look through a bunch of things. And I'm going to go back to sharing my screen for just a moment. So, and I'm going to, as I just said, Woullard and I are going to have a conversation about data security, and it'll be sort of a fishbowl conversation. So the rest of you can think of this as a kind of a case study that we're creating in action, that you're getting to witness. And when we've wrapped up where we are, then we'll open it up to questions and answers. Although if you have a burning question that is getting in the way of your ability to follow where we're going, please, so just a really intense clarifying question, feel free to jump in and say, Christine, I don't get what you just said, or, you know, that arrow is going in the wrong direction, or whatever. Otherwise, we'll hold off on the questions till the end. And yeah, and so I'm going to share my screen. No, I am sharing my screen. Okay, and so today's guest is Woullard Lett. And Woullard, I'll let you go ahead and introduce yourself, and to whatever degree you want to. And then I'll stop sharing our screen and we'll just jump into the situation that you that brought up this today's session.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Christine. Thank you everyone for allowing me this opportunity. Woullard Lett, as I said in my text intro, here in Manchester, New Hampshire. And for about the last 5 years, I've worked for about the last 5 years, I've worked for the Unitarian Universalist Association in a role, which is a liberal religious organization. In fact, it's a sibling of the United Church of Christ, you know, both birthed from the Congregationalist movement. And for the last 5 years, I worked as regional lead and for New England. And in traditional Protestant church polity, that role would have been considered a bishop. And so about a year or so ago, I told my supervisor, it's like, hey, a couple of years, I'm going to be 70 years old. I plan on retiring, you know. And so I'm telling you now so we can get the succession stuff going. And so they said, okay, you know, and I had talked about my previous career prior to working at and with the church. I worked at a university and was started out as an administrator for a graduate degree program at this little school in New Hampshire called New Hampshire College, that is now Southern New Hampshire University. And I did that for about 10 years, and I was asked to create a new department at the college, a alumni group, alumni group for, because we had students, international students, and it was a program that was created in the 80s. It was non-traditional in that it was low residency, and people would come to New Hampshire one weekend out of the month. So my supervisor knew this, so she said, hey, well, you're only going to be around a couple of years. We are interested in starting a program that would support lay leaders. Would you be interested in doing that sort of as you head out the door? And so I agreed and moved from the regional lead role into a role as something that was called, that is called Leadership Ministry Associate. And the rationale for creating this position, well, there are a couple of things. One, we all know, all of us here today are here probably because we are at least aware because we're aware of the demographic changes happening in American society, both demographic and technological, that's really impacting the way we relate to one another. Our friend, whose name I'm escaping me right now, about 10, 15 years ago, wrote the book Bowling Alone, that talked about something called social capital, or social relationships, and how they were changing and group activity was not happening as much. So the association, because of its structure and because of its engagement and reliance to some degree, based on its its theology on participation of congregants, is starting to experience the challenge of getting the kind of volunteer support it needs, at the associational level, and they're seeing similar thing at the congregational level. So my job, fix that problem, and say, okay. I mean, and that's my professional stuff, the university and now the church. I have a background in, being, really active in the community, and a lot of community organizing over the years. Spent about 30 years in Chicago, where I grew up and grew into my community engagement stuff. So that is, and so when this idea came up about working with the lay leaders, thought about it, and it's like, well, within the church, religious professionals have professional organizations. The ministers have the Ministers Association, administrators, musicians, all religious educators. They all have professional associations, but lay leaders don't. You serve on the church board, you're a worship leader. If you're a volunteer or a lay leader, you kind of like out there doing it on your own. And while there are some efforts to pull together churches for social justice work on a statewide level, there really is not support for lay leaders who are involved in their congregational role, and or lay leaders who are volunteering at the associational level. So, I, of course, being an old organizer, says, well, one of the most important things that can happen is the flow of information, both, up and down from the association to congregations, and horizontally among peers. And I had already been sort of looking around, poking around in various places, always keeping an eye open for my for opportunities to contribute to relationship building. And so when I saw this, the conceptualization of social network analysis as a social system, then I thought it was attractive. I thought it was interesting. So I went to talk to my supervisor. I was kind of excited. It's like, hey, I'm thinking about doing this thing. One of the things that I will do, one component of my plan for my organizing is to have one component is to have a standard like leadership development curriculum among, that's provided to all congregations, and all congregants are eligible to participate. But then once you move from being a congregant to either a committee chair or a member of the congregational board, then you'll be eligible for this leadership ministry network, which is the vehicle that will use to convene folk, maybe face-to-face, maybe 3 times a year, tri-quarterly, and also maybe every 6 months have some kind of online activity, organizing it around, people's interests, maybe their geographic location, maybe their role within the organization, and give folk a chance to talk to each other and create this peer support network. And so, what better way to kind of bring that to life and overcome some of the limitations of online stuff is to liven it up with pictures and descriptions and a social systems map. Went to my supervisor, like, look, this is a new thing that I want to add, a new element that I want to add to the work that I'm doing to support lay leaders. And her response was like, she's like, oh, well, what about, what about security? Like, well, what do you mean security? Well, I mean, how much exposure will this result in? Have you talked to IT about it? Like, what is this thing? It's kind of out. We got to in-house, of course, the Association has an in-house IT department. It's like, don't we have anything that we can do with some kind of enterprise solution that we can control? And, like, oh, okay, well, I'll talk to IT. So, IT says like, hey, look, I can see you. So what are you trying to do? This is what I'm trying to do. Say, oh, okay, well, we're not doing that. And that's not really, what you're thinking about is not really what we do, quote unquote. Say, but, we don't, so I gave them the website, address for Greater Than the Sum. They looked around, the guy looked around and he said, well, I mean, of course I didn't do a deep dive, he says, but I don't see anything really that talks about security. So it looks like security is kind of a low concern. And he said, I wouldn't be worried about, what do you call, my supervisor said, well, she was concerned about participants being targeted, because of their, through the map, because of their connection and relationship with the Unitarian Universalist Association. Now, in 2008 in Knoxville, Tennessee, there was a mass shooting at the congregation in Knoxville. And the person left a note saying something about, that it took issue with some of the policies of the church. Church is a welcoming, institution, congregation. It supports, folk regardless of what their sexuality is. So it has an active LGBTQA plus orientation. Our congregations in Texas and in Florida are experiencing, experiencing a lot of concern around anti-trans messaging and policy that's popping up. And there's this craziness afoot in the land. And so there was so my supervisor was concerned about the personal safety of the participants. The IT guy, he says, well, and I think I probably said something to him, like I said to my supervisor. Well, most of the people we're going to be having on the map, their information, who they are, their identities are available on church websites. So it's not like we're presenting information that wouldn't necessarily be available, and she's like, yeah, but we put it all in one place. The IT guy says, well, I'm not so concerned about the personal safety. I'm more concerned about the reputational risk we as a UUA take by asking people to come onto this platform. And then if something happens, even if it could be a financial crime, but whatever it happens, it'll be viewed as the UUA's fault, And so with that kind of general background, I'm sure there's more, and it'll seep out as we talk. But I reached back out. I reached out to Christine. It's like, hey, I'm hearing these concerns. I'm sure this is nothing new, and what's the answer? So here we are.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. First of all, security is a big deal to us. We have networks. We have networks all over the globe where they're doing political action work that is dangerous, that we're, in places where people are afraid not of reputation loss, but of loss of life because the governments are so against what they're doing. So, we care very much, and a big piece of our security, we have, so I'll get into it, but I'm just trying to give a high level. We do everything we can to make our servers very secure. So, we have a DevOps guy who's kind of neurotic about the potential for hacking, and he's, very, very adamant about the security measures we take. So in terms of our server, we are very secure. We are as secure as we can get, which isn't perfect. If the big, all the hacks that you've heard of, or all the, all of the ransomware stuff that you've heard of, if that's possible, then anything's possible. So there's no 100% absolute safety. Most of what we do, though, is not publicly available. So there are things that I'm going to tell you that you'll be able to do that reduce the visibility of what we're doing to the point where hackers aren't going to be looking because they don't know this map exists. So a big piece of, you know, when I'm concerned about security is just flying under the radar, you know, not like attracting a whole lot of, you know, bad actor attention, and doing what we can in our server. But I'm rambling. I'm sort of running around in circles in my mind. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen, and I am, for those of you who know me, I kind of require a Miro board for just about every conversation. And so I'm just going to point out so this is the high level things that I think can get at what, you know, what the concerns that I've heard you voice from your supervisor and from your IT people, Woullard. And then we can dig even deeper into smaller details. But the main thing is, okay, if this is, well, I'll just start here. I think you know this, but I'm going to just make sure that all the data is gathered in sumApp, and so it lives in we'll just call it, hang on. Lives in sumApps, so the data goes in through forms, goes down into I'm going to put down here, into the sumApp server. This is held by, this is an AWS server. You know, I have my mixed feelings about Amazon, but their servers are fairly robustly protected, and that's and fairly robustly resilient, and that's was a big reason why we chose them. So the data goes sorry. From the sumApp survey, and there's multiples of these, but we'll just look at one instance from the survey into the sumApp server, and then it goes into, let's do this, your Kumu map. It goes into your Kumu project and then is displayed in your Kumu map. So this is the first step that I think everybody's kind of aware of, is that we have this live link from sumApp into Kumu so that it's always kept updated. What is less familiar to people is the understanding that this map can be either public or private. So if you make it a private map, then boom, no one can find it. It's not, that means private. Gray means private. It's not findable by any search engine. It's not listed in the Kumu website. It's, you know, if someone knew you had a map and could guess what you called it and could guess what your Kumu account name was, they could hypothetically recreate the URL that opens the map, but that would take some intentionality and some awareness that a map exists and some understanding of your situation. So that's the starting point, is most maps that we make are not publicly available. They're not publicly viewable anywhere. And so that's you know, that high level is if you're concerned about, you know, just random bad actors stumbling across your community map, it's pretty unlikely. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's fairly unlikely. So that's step one. And I just want to see if that's clear to you, Woullard, if you've got questions about that.
No, that is clear. I'm familiar with, you know, private stuff.
Yeah. Okay. So then what we do with this map is in sumApp. So right now this is two different platforms with two different administer logins. You know, you have to have an account in sumApp, you have to have an account in Kumu. And what we don't want to do is make it so that everybody on the map has to have a Kumu account, and you have to go in and manually give each person access to the map, give them permission to view the map. That would be really cumbersome, and for both your end users and for yourself. So we don't do that. So what we do is we take this map and we make it what's called an embed of it, and we embed it back into sumApp. So now the map is viewable in the sumApp instance by the user. So for starters, and I'll just make one other thing really clear, which is that every person who is in a map has their own sumApp instance. So if we say the survey and the, the connections page, all of that, etc. These all are unique to each person in the map. So they each person has their own URL. That's not how I should do that, but I'm not going to worry about it. So each person has their own URL into this little bit of access. So they're also going to see the map. And so one thing that you want to make people aware of is that their URL, where they can go back and update their survey whenever they want, is theirs alone, and they should not share it with other people. Sometimes people are confused, and sometimes they say, here's the link, and they'll send it to everybody. And it's like, no, that's your link. That's not everybody's link. But that kind of confusion can happen. And if that happens, if they send it to somebody that shouldn't see it, that somebody could access the map. But that's one of the ways that the map could be accessed within the sumApp interface by someone you don't want to have see it. Is that clear? Is there any questions there?
Is the sharing of the survey like the only place where I see like a direct input is just the survey going to the wrong person or being shared where somebody else can
Well, I think this might be the answer, but if it's not, please correct me. But each person's unique survey has their existing data. So if I accidentally send my survey link to 100 other people, any of those 100 other people could change my data, and they could see the data of mine that was existing in that survey. And they can also see the map, and the map pretty much has most of the data, most of everyone's data. So at the survey level, they'd only be able to interface with my data. But if the map, and the map is a thing that you can turn off and on. So while you're building your map, you don't usually have it in your sumApp instance, but once it's looking good, you'll put it in there. So if the map is turned on and embedded, then they can see the map, and then they can gather all the data that's in the map. Did that answer it, Christiane? Clear enough? And you're muted, so I can't, I can.
Thank you, it did. So because of that unique identifier, so the only thing that could potentially be changed is the information of the person who accidentally shared it with somebody else.
Yeah, so if we're talking about simply changing data, that it's limited to that one person, but they can still view all the other data. Rains.
And this I appreciate, Woullard, the work you're doing in the context here, Christine. But I feel like in some parallel worlds where we're creating such a powerful thing with this map, I want to share it as far and wide as possible. I want to make this info so accessible. That's the balance we're always walking of sharing more, making it more public, more easy to get to the info. And I wonder if you've done something like have a public and private version of maps or other similar ways of balancing that.
Yeah. Yes, we have done that, and I'll talk a little bit more about what makes that possible in a little bit. And but yeah, no matter what, there's always a tension. Well, not no matter what. Sometimes it's very clear this is going to be private, and it's never going to be anything but private because lives could be at stake. And no one will participate if it's not super private. But usually there's a bit of a tension between sort of wanting to show off our network and wanting the information to be broadly available and the willingness of the members to participate. So the data is coming from the members. It's not like it's my data and I get to decide what to do with it. It's like I have to convince these people to be willing to share their data in this map, and they care what we do with it. And they might and they might not. In some cases, they might want the data to be public because they want to be visible and they want their relationships to be visible. It just depends on the context and the goals of the network. But yeah, that's always a decision that needs to be made with you know, especially if there's a little bit of, if it's an iffy thing, then usually getting some input from the network members themselves is important. Thanks for that question, Rains. Richard, thanks for putting up your electronic hands. I can still see them. I don't have to keep track. It's very helpful.
So to clarify, the sumApp survey and URL, I guess I was under the impression that to access that, one would need to log in and use a password to get access to that. So is that wrong?
No,
Okay.
I'll explain how that works. So the and we did think about this in the beginning, but when we first built sumApp, the use cases were simpler, and the big thing was, well, we don't want to make our users have to have another account and have another password and another sign-on. They won't do it. And that's kind of where the technology landed was, okay, how can we do this without forcing everybody to have their own login? So, so they don't. And we have since concluded that we would like there to be an option. We would like to make that an optional thing, so that you can say, yeah, make them log in, or no, don't make them log in. But you know, it's sort of somewhere in the roadmap. We have a very limited budget. We don't have financial support from any institutional financial support, and sumApp doesn't bring in a whole lot of money. A little bit. And so we just haven't, that has not risen to a priority to make logins and passwords, to do the technical changes, because it's kind of a significant change. So how it works, given the way it is now, is you've got a list of members. However they get in there, there's different ways they can get in there, but once there's a list of members, the members, there's an email attached to every member, and you send an invitation to each person. I mean, you just hit the one send button that goes to all the people in the network, or all the people you've decided to send it to. And so each person has their own unique URL, which lands in their email box. So we assume they have a email, you know, like they're taking, so this is another piece of security though, is for people to be taking care of not getting their emails accounts hacked. So if someone's gotten into someone's email and has access to their email account, then this link will work for them. So that's a piece of the puzzle that we don't have control over. But yeah, so that they get each sumApp knows with each email what link is associated with it, and each person gets their own link. And so they get an email in their inbox, they click on the link, and then they're in their sumApp account without a password. Does that clarify the question? I think it clarifies the question, and I'm Richard, I'm thinking I'm seeing you thinking. You're muted if you were going to say anything.
Yes, I minimized my window when I tried to click on my microphone. But anyway, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So that is a consideration, and that is one of the.
Well, I guess, and then maybe Woullard can come back to that. So did the IT people understand this aspect of the sumApp experience when you talk to them? I mean, you may want to come back to that question later, Christine.
Yeah, let's come back to that later. But yeah, so this is a piece though of the puzzle, is for people to be very clear that they're like how the data flows and where the weaknesses, the potential weaknesses exist. And yeah. Okay, so everyone can see, so I was just gonna put little, so this is like, you know, we've got each unique URL goes to the emails, and then so that's a point of potential weakness if people's emails have been hacked. Another, go ahead. someone was going to ask a question? No. I thought I heard a voice. Okay. A thing to note here is that, we have never done this. It's just dawned on me as a possibility, and now, and I've never thought of this before, but now that it's just dawned on me, this might be a good experiment that I think I will ask Tim to do at some point. But this link that goes from Kumu into sumApp, well, any Kumu map, again, it can be a public map, which means it's listed somewhere and it's findable, or it can be a private map. But in whether it's public or private, you can make what's called an embed link, and the embed takes the whole map and puts it somewhere else. So it's live, it's coming from Kumu, it's as interactive as if it were in Kumu, but so that's how we put it into sumApp. And sometimes you'll put it, so Richard, you were talking about earlier, do you ever have like a public map and a private map? And those, if the map itself is private, which you would have to be in order to have that scenario you're talking about, you would then have to make two different embeds. One is the private one, and then you could put a public one out in the public somewhere. There's implications around precise data points that I can talk about later, but what just struck me is that this embed link now can be password protected. And so potentially, Brian, I know you're a big Kumu guy. Have you ever used a password protected embed link?
Yes.
Have you?
Yes.
And so let's say, is it clear enough what I'm talking about, that if the embed link is, the map is embedded into sumApp, that people could click on their link, and then the sumApp, the map tab in sumApp would load, but it would pop up a password thing, and they'd have to put that in before they could actually see the map. Is that how that would work?
That's how that would work.
Okay. That's a potential. Is that clear to everybody what I just sort of discovered
That's
in my head and had Brian confirm?
That's cool.
Okay.
So from the survey in that scenario, the URL that is not password protected, but if you have the map that has to be password protected, so the only thing that they have access to is just their own questionnaire or survey.
Yep. So
Okay.
yeah, if that URL got in the hands of the wrong person, that wrong person could change the data of the person whose URL it belongs to. So like if I send it out, they could change my data, but they would not be able to access the map. It would be on a separate tab, and that tab, after it loaded, would require a password to load the map.
Now, is that an individual password, Brian, or Christine, or?
It's a shared password to the whole embed, right, Brian? Because I see you make it when you're creating.
That's right.
Yeah. So it would be common to everybody. And so again, if you've got a really big network and someone in the network just doesn't care, doesn't think it's important or whatever, and shares the password with the wrong people or publishes it somewhere, you'd still have the same situation, but they'd still need a URL to get into the sumApp instance. They need an individual person's unique link. Woullard, I'm not seeing you, and I'm going to stop sharing for a minute because I just want to. Woullard, yeah, I wasn't seeing your face because I was sharing and you were off in the other tab.
Yeah, off in the ether.
How's this landing for you?
I think that well, there are a couple of thoughts that I have. One is that I think, I mean, I'm here with the rest of the folk here, so I am attracted towards these kind of technological solutions. So there are, I mean, we're talking about the features of the map, And what I will need to do is really be able to understand and articulate the benefits,
Mhm.
not what I think are benefits, but
Yeah.
what the potential participants feel are benefits. So this is helpful. I mean, this is helpful, and it helps me know what some of the options are, and I mean, as I think about it, it's like maybe actually. So what are the alternatives to using a map? Well, you got some of the text-based alternatives.
Yeah.
Group, I mean, you got Slack,
Yeah.
you got Teams, you got, what do you call listservs if you're really old school, that kind of stuff. But so yeah, I mean, this is useful. It's I didn't have a specific problem, but just a general concern. And receiving this information about how things work will make it easier for me to explain to other folk as I invite them to be involved, as well as to I kind of, the word that comes to mind is justify, but to articulate, the reason and rationale around why I think this is a viable option.
Yeah. Well, and in my experience, like step number one, or a very early step, is getting clear on the security issues and understanding how the data flows happens. That's, people have to be reassured about that, or at least feel like they understand the risks and are okay with the risks that are there. And then, along with that is that the whole making the case for why is a map valuable. They go together, and often security concerns are just like a very easy proxy for saying, I don't get it and I'm not comfortable, and it's not gonna be secure, so let's not do it. So that's one of the steps in this whole justifying process. Christiane, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I was thinking about, I mean, I'm happy to hear, Christine, all the things that you've thought about, the security aspects. Because that's a real, I mean, there's the technological side, and then there is the human social side, and context really matters. My mind goes to group size, and that if you're in a group, and the power maybe in sumApp, that with the relationships that get built amongst the members, in a map sometimes, so that there might be almost like Wikipedia, some kind of a self-policing within the community, is to say, like, this isn't like my friend Tom's profile got hacked literally from Facebook, which he uses for, just for social media. And somebody else had his banner, his picture, and then was trying to follow all of his friends. And so I just notified Tom, and I think those kinds of alerts will happen when in a map, in a group, when people know one another.
Yeah.
So I was just thinking about group size, that when do people know one another in the group, or do they not? Because I think that the element of care and the self-police element is perhaps the most powerful one within the group.
Yeah. Well, and a piece to know is that unlike Facebook or LinkedIn, I mean, LinkedIn and Facebook are basically one monster-sized map with sub-nodes in it. So my Facebook page is just the people. I mean, if I were actively using a Facebook page, would just be the people that I'm connected to would see my page, but the whole, everybody who's in Facebook can find it, and they can find the public version of it. And so it's and the same with LinkedIn. This is like each data set is its own discrete. There's nowhere except for in the server that all the members exist in one big pile. It's just in the server. So your map only has your members in it. There's no overlap. I mean, people belong to different networks, but there's no technological overlap from one data set to another. So that's another piece of the puzzle, is the only people who are likely to see your map are people who are, if you embed it in Kumu or in sumApp, you're only sharing it with the people who are on the map. You're not sharing it with the whole world. they
Would
don't
be
even-
okay if I pick up a question, and I apologize that probably most members of the group already know the answer to that, but could you speak a little bit about to the different maps? Because Kumu is a data visualization tool, and
Yep.
so you could have a Kumu map and you can set it to private and public. Why bring, what is the benefit of bringing it back into sumApp? So because you drew that,
Yeah.
if you could, to the different options or purposes perhaps.
Yeah, if you, well, there's two. One is if you have a private map and you want the members of the network to be able to see it, they have to, if it's a private map, they have to have their own Kumu account. And then you have to go into the admin part of the map and give them observer permission or observer permission if it's a private map. So that's tedious. And it's confusing for map members. If it's a public map, you could just share the map in some public place and but you'd still be, you wouldn't be requiring your map members to have a second account, but they would have to go to a different place. They would be sharing their data in one location, and then they would be looking at it in a different location. And if they see, oh, I've been working with so-and-so a lot more, and I want to go change that connection, they've got to go to a different place. They've got to find their link and go to a different place. Whereas if you've got them both in the same, in the same browser tab, then they can just go back and forth and update their responses immediately. And so it's just really confusing for map members to say there's a map and there's two parts to it and you have to go to two different places. So that's the reason. I want to just quickly go back. I want to add another piece to this before we just say this is complete. There's two things. One, I'm just going to say this is, I don't know how to do this. I haven't done this, but Seth, who we did a deep dive with, I think it was last month, in his global friends, I can't remember that, but it's a Quaker Friends, the global organization.
American Friends Service Committee.
Yeah, thank you. They were very, very concerned about data security, and Seth and I had this conversation in, one-on-one, and went deeper in Slack and sort of went back and forth and this is a while, a year or two ago. What Seth ended up doing was they didn't feel comfortable with what we have. And he created a way, and I think this was very cumbersome and requires a lot of technical skills. And I'm not even going to look into it, but he created a way to embed each member's URL into a SharePoint page. They used Microsoft Outlook and Office and all that stuff globally for the whole network or organization. And so they already would have SharePoint or Microsoft accounts. And so he has each person has their own SharePoint page, which has everything in it. And so that if you really, 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 if you use Microsoft and SharePoint would be relevant for you and you really feel strongly about data security, I would suggest you talk to Seth. One last thing I wanted to say was that now in the new survey, this is only true for the survey, it's not true for the connections page yet, but in the new survey, you can say specific fields are private. You can assign them to be private, which means that that particular field won't get put into Kumu. I'm going to back this up. I'm going to start with this public Kumu map. When we said public versus private, in this instance, the instances where I've done this, what we've done is we've had all the data in the private map and only some of the data in the public map. So things like gender and gender identity and sometimes race and sometimes, like things that might seem like a political affiliation or might point to a political affiliation. Those would be fields that the client would not feel safe, would not feel like their members would be willing to share that data if they thought it was going to be publicly visible. So the public map in Kumu, your fields are all in Kumu, and you can go in and you can call those private. You can just say this field is private, this field, you can just assign fields to be private so that they're showing in the private map, but not in the public map. That is one way you can handle this. Another way is, there's just a little, anyone who can get at a Kumu map, if the data is live, is coming from a Google Sheet or sumApp, if there's a live link that's feeding the data store, anyone who has a little bit of technical chops can figure out how to view the underlying data set. So this is way beyond what most people need to know, and I'm guessing that Brian might be aware of this, and so I'm saying this because I'm thinking Brian will notice that I'm leaving it out if I don't, or it's a thing. So, and it's related to security. But if you are in any map in Kumu, you can, if you can see the map, you can you can go into your developer panel and you can poke around and you can actually access all the data. So using this hiding some fields for a public map works, but not perfectly. It is hackable. Most cases, people aren't that concerned and they just go, oh yeah, who's going to do that? But if you are in a situation where you feel like, oh yeah, that's a problem, we don't want that, then you can go into the survey, the new survey, the rebuild that we did last year in sumApp, and you can say, these fields are private and they won't go into the map at all. So they won't end up in the private map, but they won't end up hackable. And so that's data that you might want to know, and you might want to put it into just get it from the spreadsheet, but it won't go into the data, the whole JSON link. Oh my God, I was not prepared to say that in an articulate way. I apologize for that. I'm going to stop sharing, and we're almost to the top of the hour, and I'm just want to open it up, and especially those of you who haven't asked questions or had an opportunity to speak, if you've got anything that you want to, especially questions that aren't answered for you, love to hear them. Amy.
I'm kind of embarrassed to ask this question, but I would love to just know the quick answer. So when I was presenting to a potential new client, I think they were thinking like LinkedIn and Facebook and, all of that. And there was this, oh gosh, I don't know what the word I want to use, cynical comment about greater than the sum. Well, what are they going to do with the data, or how, are they going to take the data and do something? And I was like, well, no, I know, Christine, that's not going to happen. But I was like, where does it say, is it in the terms and conditions or something that there's that, sense of privacy? Yeah.
It is in the privacy statement, which is on the website, and also I think in the help desk. And if you can't find it, Kara can help you find it. But we do say we look at that data when there's a technical problem and we're debugging something. And other than that, that's it. We never will, we never would. It's just not part of our way of being. It would be to do that. So I would find that very offensive if anybody tried to do that. But yeah. Anyone else? Jim?
I have two comments because, you and I had these security questions several years ago when I was trying to map folks in Surge Bay Area, and we were interested in doing that. And the thing that you said that I thought was really useful is that a lot of this data exists. And so either the bad guys are going to use it or the good guys are going to use the data to do something with it. And so thinking from that framework, it gives you a chance to weigh those tensions. And I thought that was a useful comment. The other thing is that, and I think this is where the folks in that environment decided not to do mapping, was that it pulls together information that isn't pulled together in any other way. It makes it visible, makes it super powerful. And so, you know, you have to decide, you know, at some point if having that information put in that way is
Yeah.
going to be some kind of a risk. And then you've got all these protections that we just talked about.
Yeah,
But-
yeah, absolutely.
So.
Thanks. Christian, are you, I want us to do announcements because there are some people who don't get, well, let's just go ahead. Are you going to stick around for the after half hour, Christian? Do you have an, okay, so we'll get to you. So Kara, are you, I didn't forewarn you, but I think today would be a good day for announcements. Are you willing and ready to share?
Got it. I
Yeah.
absolutely am.
Yeah.
Our Monday sense making session is coming up on May 6th. Amy Moritz and Curtis Miller community members are currently leading those sessions. Christine doesn't know this yet, but we do have a new map to share next month for our on-ramp session. So that's on May 13th. And that will be our community members, Narayan Wong and Danielle Johnson. I did not get the specific name of their map yet, but I will get that shortly. And then our third Monday sessions are deep dives like this one. So the next one is coming up on May 20th. And then kind of hinted at the beginning in our chat discussions, but we do have our community building session coming up this month. And that is April 22nd. And that one's a little bit more of a free form where community members can show up and get to know each other. And I believe because it is Arbor Day, the topic is around environmental justice in a sort of sense. So I'll put some links in the chat here. And those are our announcements.
Great, thank you. So, if you need to jump off, we have a little goodbye ritual. We'll do that now. And then if you don't need to jump off, feel free to stick around. But the goodbye ritual is simply we all unmute. I'll count down 3, 2, 1. And then we all at the same time, verbally and physically give each other our blessings and our love and our greetings for the rest of the day. And then if you need to go, just go, and then we'll continue. So top of the hour, 3, 2, 1.
Thank you so
Be
much,
well.
everybody.
Have a great day, all.
Wonderful to
Appreciate
see you
it.
all.
See you.
I'm
Bye.
glad I came. Thank you. Have a great day.
And then, yes, feel free to stay. So, Christiane, you were, you're still here. Yeah. Do you want to ask your question?
It wasn't a question. It was actually, so I'm so glad I came. This is the private public piece, I think, is like another layer now that I'm learning might be useful for research, because the type of topics that I'm working on are sensitive, where you disclose a lot of sensitive data, and it's important in relationship to the topic who you are, and and so that's very powerful. So I think I look forward to learning more about how that might, doing a workshop this summer where I will ask the audience some questions, and it would be helpful if they understood that some questions, that the data that they're giving is important, but that some of it will be private. So I look forward to learning more how that's used. That's great.
Good. Yeah. Woullard, I just appreciate your willingness to be a case study and to just share your situation and then open up so that because I have this is one of those things that made me want to start moving into the direction of doing this kind of a session, is because, every couple months someone asks me and I spend an hour one-on-one with all these people every couple months, and then nobody else learns from it. And I have the same conversation over and over. And I feel like, oh, let's do this together. It's something everyone wants to know. And then we have something to share, and maybe then others could help answer the question, or we could share a video and it can reduce that that particular conversation from me having to have it regularly. So I appreciate your willingness to go there. And
Right, right. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to, do some thinking and having some conversation about this. I know, and so both in terms of the trauma of having had a congregation actually attacked, and then with the increasing polarization of political atmosphere in my work professionally, and then in my personal life, in my community work, I live and work with people who are actually, survivors or, victims of the post-traumatic experience of a government program called COINTELPRO, where there was active, and so, if it's like we were saying, if it's, and I mean, if it's just, you worried about the neighbor down the street or somebody who's, just got a beef, then it's not so much to worry about. But and all of this gets mixed in. I'm thinking about trying to sort this out, because while, I mean, it's a good idea, and if it's a good idea to use professionally, in my professional work, it potentially also is a good idea to use in my my community work, in my personal community work. So this is really helpful. It helps me much better understand both the strengths and the weaknesses of both the technology and also the systems around it.
Yeah,
I know corporations more and more just talking about how one of the greatest vulnerabilities or weaknesses in terms of security are the users.
yeah.
It's like, it's not the tech, it's the users. So thank you for this. It was really helpful. I feel much more, articulate and able to have a conversation about it.
That's good. That's great. And it's totally, there are communities historically in the United States, we all know this, that have been researched very in really, 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 really bad ways, or like using people's data or researching them has been used against them, in profoundly horrifying ways. And so, I mean, as a mapper, I've had to be like, early on, I had to learn, oh yeah, research, people don't want to be researched, and data, people don't want it. Like, there's really good, valid reasons. So I have to, be able to understand that and help work with that. And maybe the answer isn't a map. I mean, I think a map can give all kinds of stuff, but you don't, if it's gonna create more anxiety and stress and tension than is helpful, then maybe it is. I'm just not an advocate for mapping no matter what, and recognizing that there are valid concerns that people have. So I'm glad we could, I'm glad you feel more able to talk about it in a meaningful way now. Mary, you're muted.
I wanted to add that in the map I was part of creating, in the introduction to the survey, we said how the map was going to be used, and there was some little risk statement, sort of disclosure. I can't remember what it was, but I can find that. And so I think that's helpful too, that there is some upfront.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you for offering that. I think that would be useful.
Rains, I'm wondering what brought you here, how you found out about us.
Well, I've been getting your emails since 2022 when I went to an initial workshop. When just seeing the tools used from, I guess, the Liberating Structures Conference and some other communities I've been part of more recently. And so looking at either usefulness, appropriateness as we're getting more serious in Kumu and other tools. Trying to make it more automatable and shareable, and finding like, okay, how much, the types of challenges have been mentioned, and not just in this sphere, but I found my main role in life as a connector, a matchmaker, facilitator. So I'm looking how can I be effective at that? How can I use the right tools, CRM tools, and now make it more visible and shared. It does feel to me like a large part of how we get security in these things, or comfort, at least among our communities, is by building capacity and awareness. It's something new and has potential to good and harm, and if we can just help the good outrun the harm, and build more awareness, so people are,
Yeah.
if they're seeing a problem, nipping it in the bud, but also just to be more collectively aware of the issues. And I guess in the sense that a network is only as strong as its weakest node, and so make sure that everybody is up to speed on potential attacks from as far as social engineering or bad actors. So we're all collectively defending and sharing information about people that are probing our network, and so not just so making it so that it's a living, sharing environment where we're communicating more and building relationships more, and making transparency a net positive rather than a risk factor.
Yeah. Yeah. Who else has thoughts or questions? See, Amy is busy. Christiane, were you raising your hand? Yeah.
My real hand.
Your real hand.
Yeah. Are there examples of, I guess one question is the sumApp map an displayed via an iframe as well, just like the Kumu map, you get an iframe code?
The map, are you asking, is the Kumu map embed in an iframe?
Yeah, but yeah, so you said that both of them use the iframe feature to, if you wanted to share it, like let's say the Kumu map, you did not want all the, you would like, let's like scenario is you would like to have the map be public, meaning like displayed on a website. So I guess one question is, would you use, I suppose you would use the Kumu map, but also the one brought back into sumApp. Does that also generate, what does that generate as a map? If an iframe or a URL or
it's an extension of the individual's unique URL. It doesn't, there's nothing in sumApp that can be, I mean, so the Kumu map is embedded into the each individual's sumApp instance on its own tab. And there's nothing, it doesn't generate like, well, here, I'm gonna pull up our map and my instance of, I'll just do it the long way because I'm.
And my follow-up question is, are any of the public maps displayed on websites? Like, are there examples where people are using them? I know the Ellen MacArthur Foundation was using them to show, they have all these circular economy initiatives, one around, clothing waste, one around food waste, so were trying to bring together the researchers and the industry partners and so.
Hang on a second. So I'm not entirely sure that the MacArthur Foundation public maps are what we would literally call a social system map. I think they're a variation on the theme that isn't using, I mean, it's not using sumApp, so I'm not sure. I'd have to look for them, but last I've looked, they were what I would call.
No, they were only using Kumu, and like you said in the last meeting, it became unsustainable because it wasn't dynamic. And so, yeah.
Let me, so I'm going to share with you, this is, I think you've seen this now. Have you put yourself on our map? Christiane, I can't remember if you have or not, but.
I wonder.
Pardon me?
I'm not sure yet. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not.
Yes, she has.
Mary would know. Mary.
Thank you, Mary.
I just updated my survey yesterday or sometime, and I saw you there.
So
exist.
You exist. So for those of you who haven't seen this, this is the landing page of the URL. And so this piece here, if you can see my URL, which I know is this piece here is just total uniquely generated what's the word? Encryption code that, so a person would have to know exactly what my code is to see my instance. And then the map, so this is what we're saying now, is that as this is loading, according to Brian's experience, and I'll double check this, as this map is loading here, there would be a little pop-up that asks for a password before any of the data would actually come into the tab. So you'd have to put a password there. So what was my point here? Oh, so this map, that there's nothing here. I mean, you can see that the extension has just gone from bio like that now to map. But it still would be my own instance. You can't see now, says you did something wrong and that page doesn't exist. So if you're trying to get in there and you're messing around with this stuff, you'll get an error message if you don't hit on exactly the right thing. But there's nothing on this page other than, I mean, this is not generating anything, Christian. This is just an embed from Kumu. Does that make sense? I'm not sure if that helps here. And I'll show you, let's see. In Kumu, if you go to
So Kumu, in other words, but you did answer it. Kumu generates the iframe code.
yeah. And I don't know if it's literally an iframe. Let's look. It's yeah, it is an iframe.
And embed code.
Yeah, so it does the embed code. And it does it at a certain size, and sometimes you don't like the size, and so you have to, Tim has this way of fiddling with this little piece of the code here to make it just
yeah.
Okay, if you're comfortable with that, and then right here is where the password would go. And so when you make your embed, you'd add a password before you make it. And then this link, we don't use this embed actually in Kumu or in sumApp. We just take this particular link, copy that link, and then stick it into the settings page in the back end of sumApp, which I'm going to go to just because I'm sharing my screen, and why not? So so we go down to the map label, the Kumu map, and then the embed link just goes right there. Other questions from anyone? Other concerns or big ideas, or just off the topic, change of topic? Well, we've got 15 minutes left.
I was just wondering, from other people you've worked with, where you said there was severe concerns that had to do with loss of life. Was there anything related to your work with them that is relevant here?
I mean, I'm thinking specifically of Lisa Nigstan's Mekong Delta environmental activist network. And that was a place where some of the, I can't remember, it's Vietnam, Cambodia, there's 4 countries in the Delta, and somebody was being very punitive. So one of those governments there was a phase where leading activists, prominent activists were getting jailed and getting death threats from the government. But I mean, that pre-existed the map. We sort of went through a bunch of hoops to make sure everybody felt safe, and everybody was really super. It was a small map. It was only like 30 people.
Oh,
People, so it wasn't huge anyway. And they went ahead with it, but it didn't, aside from us helping them feel comfortable, there wasn't any other.
okay.
Yeah. Was there more to the question, or is there?
No.
Yeah. But there's, some of our maps have, women working in Africa on gender issues, which can be, fairly volatile issues at the moment. And there's just all, Everywhere there's
Mm.
concern due to polarization. Yeah. Christiane.
I wonder about the file format of the survey. In sumApp, is it JSON, CSV? Like, what are the file formats?
So the file formats for the export of the data,
Mhm.
it can be exported into a CSV. It can be, sumApp will generate a JSON link. And if you have the JSON link, then you can open the JSON link in a, well, whatever tool, you can open it in a browser and see the data from the JSON link. And that link is what goes into Kumu. So the JSON link feeds right into Kumu, and then that's the pathway for data updates to go into the map. And then,
Thank you.
yeah. We also, if you ever work with Graph Commons, which one of our mappers is a big Graph Commons fan, and so the data that gets exported from Kumu, it's exported, or from sumApp, it's exported in the format that Kumu wants it to be in. So it's some of the content of the fields is formatted like with pipe delimited, or the headers are all designed to work exactly the way Kumu wants. So you don't have to do anything with it. You can just download it and upload it. And we also did that with CSV exports for Graph Commons. So you could just download it for Graph Commons and upload it if you were to use that tool.
I like the idea of Tableau, because you can then filter.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah. And probably, I mean, I haven't tried to play with Tableau in our data, but yeah, it's been a while. Tableau doesn't do network maps, so it's not gonna do the connections unless it's changed in the last few years since I played with it, but it will give you can visualize the element data sheet. Yeah, I'd have to think some more to talk very knowledgeably about how you could use it with Tableau, but it's in a CSV, so if you know how to play with Tableau, you can figure it out.
The only experience I had with creating something where Tableau was useful was from a learning management system, the downloads, the learning outcomes result report. So it's almost like taking a snapshot in your sumApp file. Survey is taken, and twice a year or 3 times a year, you are doing a download of that of data at the time. And then you can feed that into Tableau. And I think the way we did that so that it was ongoing was using a Google form or something, so that the data was always flowing up to Tableau. So you didn't have to, it was just that when you were ready, and this could be very helpful for before and after, or as events. I mean, just, so maybe I don't know if that will be covered at some point, but I see a lot of actually possibilities for research use. I wouldn't, and I may invite like a systems analyst, a friend of mine, who is much better with quantitative analysis than I am, and so maybe she'll come in and knows exactly how to set that up. So
yeah. Yeah. Woullard, how are you feeling now?
Well, I mean, like I said, I'm feeling pretty good. I'll need some time with this new information to process it. I was just thinking that because on many, ideally on most church boards, at least half, we want maybe half of the board to turn over, each year or something, every other couple years, bringing in new people. And that means if we have a static password to a website, then it would end up being widely distributed. But at the same time, we want our leaders to stay, connect. We want, we're lifting up a form or an idea of leadership that's not exceptional. Maybe your behavior is exceptional in exceptional circumstances, But anybody, everybody's a leader. So this is helpful. I need time.
Well, here's just another, I'm glad you brought that up, because here's a thing that's really handy about the embed is that you can delete the embed and redo it whenever you want. So the link you can change. So for instance, sometimes with our community of practice map, one of the things that we say is that we use this map for learning and for teaching. And so sometimes we'll have a session like this, and we'll just put the embed link itself into the chat, and people, so anybody who's in our session can go and interact with the map. But we don't want them to have that forever. We don't want them to start sharing it or come back to it. It's just a temporary, while we're all here together talking, you can use it. And so I'll put a little date, the purpose of the link, like deep dive on April 15th, and then a couple days later, I'll go and delete the link. And so if you find that something, an embed has been hacked, or you don't, or you could redo it every year and just give out the new password, however you want to do that, but you can, you're not stuck with that being out in the world. So
one of the things that Brian put in the chat was, if you've got a secure environment already, and I don't know what that circumstance is with you in terms of the lay leadership group that you're talking about now, but if there's a secure environment that they have access to, then there is a way to do the embed there in some way within that secure environment.
Yeah.
Right. I saw that. And that'll be one of the things I'll be taking back.
Yeah. So like the Reamp network has their client, one of our oldest clients, they have a membership, an interactive membership platform. So everyone in the network has their own login into their platform, and the map is embedded in that platform. So people have to log in to see the map. And then each member in that platform, they each have their own profile, and the way the system has been designed is that then an administrator can upload each member's unique sumApp URL into their own profile page that only they can see, so they can get their URL from the, but that was, that's a custom design thing, and it's a lot of fuss, but I'm on the lookout for platforms where that's a possibility, where people could just have their own access to their interface, and the map is also just available to the whole membership there as well. So.
And Woullard, you said yourself, and Christine kind of embraced that, expanded that you can look at the risk, and that there are some risks that are there. But the real thing is the value that you're creating with the map, and what the perceived value that might have for the people who are sharing in that, because it is easy then, to focus on the risk and say, okay, I don't want those risks, so therefore I'm not going to do this. And that really is the challenge, which I often think about. I haven't put anything to paper. I haven't put anything in any kind of organization, but I'm thinking through those kinds of issues or concerns, particularly given the particular focus that I have on voter protection and the craziness of the political environment that we're faced with now. And knowing the value, there are people who would understand what the value is and make those links, and some bad actors, as it were, could in fact exploit that. But they'd have to be very focused on you and what you're doing in order to really exploit that well.
One of the things, Richard, that's coming up for me as you're saying that, is that often people will want me to help them articulate the pitch. Like, what's the pitch? How do I sell this to people? How do I convince them? And I always say it depends on the context, but like, for instance, in this kind of a situation, the risks versus the value is totally context dependent. I mean, in a different, like, if you're doing, you know, voter protection, you're looking for different rewards. You're looking for different, like what you see as valuable is going to be very different than what somebody in a different context is going to see as valuable. And so I'm always feeling like I don't have all the words. I mean, I could give you some generic words, but they're not going to fit. So you
Mhm.
need to find your words. But yeah, yeah. So we're just to the end of the half hour, and if anybody has any last burning thing they want to say, we can do that, or we can do our just our goodbye ritual and have a wonderful day.
Okay.
We ready to say goodbye?
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you so much for showing up and for sticking around, all of you. 3, 2, 1.
Be well.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Farewell.
you.
Yeah.
Thank
have a
you.
wonderful day.
Thank you, Willard.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hmm.